There was a time when the news delivered truth,
It still seems like a dream.
when integrity was paramount,
I cannot contend that I have always been right or wise.
and trusted voices guided a nation.
How do you measure such an astonishing moment?
Today, the headlines are blurred, the signal lost in the noise of corporate agendas and paid narratives.
Vocal anti-vaxxer.
Deranged lies.
It is humiliating.
What happened to the truth? It hasn't disappeared. It's simply moved. The MAHA Report brings you unfiltered, independent journalism covering the issues of the Make America Healthy Again movement. Rediscover the facts and reclaim the truth. Subscribe now at themahareport.com.
Still calling your congressman? Waiting on hold? Hoping someone took your message?
Thank you for calling.
There's a better way to do this. The MAHA Legislative Tracker lets you browse every MAHA bill. Pick the ones that matter to you and send a letter to your rep with a single click. Search federal, by state, or by the issues you care about most. Take 60 seconds and make it count. Your voice can make America healthy again at mahaaction.org.
Welcome to the MAHA Media Hub, and welcome to the MAHA Revolution. I'm Tony Lyons, president of MAHA Action. Today we're going to talk about three things that should go together but too often don't: justice, truth, and gold standard science. And we're going to talk about one man who, over a long bureaucratic career, managed to corrupt all three of these things. You know his name, you've heard it 1,000 times, nobody wants to talk about it. But most of what he actually did is being scrubbed, softened, buried by the legacy press. And I'm talking, of course, about Dr. Anthony Fauci. While the media was busy putting Dr. Fauci on magazine covers, turning him into some kind of a folk hero like a secular saint, one person refused to play along. One person used his platform to tell the truth time after time about who Fauci is, what he's done, and the long trail of damage he left behind long before any of us heard the word COVID. That person is now, thankfully, our HHS secretary, and I'm proud to call him a friend, Bobby Kennedy. It was a great honor and the most important act of my career as a publisher to hand Bobby Kennedy a megaphone. Skyhorse published The Real Anthony Fauci, and I'll say it plainly, it's the most important book we've ever put out into the world. It's an indictment, page by page, of a man whose deception, dishonesty, financial entanglements, and outright profiteering are the opposite of everything real science is supposed to stand for. While it was the most censored book in recent history, it sold over 1.4 million copies, and I believe it started a kind of a revolution. Most Americans only got to know Dr. Fauci during COVID. Before that, he sat quietly atop a maze of bureaucracy that somehow gave the director of the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases more real-world power than the heads of HHS or CDC. Think about that for a second. A man almost no one has heard of or had heard of at the time, running the show and getting paid more than the president. So let's run through the record. Fauci lied about where COVID came from, and he's not faced a single legal or professional, or in the eyes of the corporate press, reputational consequence for misleading the American people and the entire world. Fauci misrepresented what the virus itself was, and then he pushed for lockdowns that had no constitutional basis and no real scientific footing. Those lockdowns gutted life. They shuttered churches, they devastated kids, schooling. They wiped out small businesses that families had spent generations building. They tore into the social fabric of this country in ways that we're still trying to repair. and he hasn't answered for any of that. Fauci lied about so-called preventative measures. The masks were a farce, and privately he knew it. The science wasn't there, and he knew the science wasn't there. But the masks were powerful, not as a medical tool, but as a symbol of control over ordinary people's daily lives. And then he lied about the COVID shots and about what they were, what they could do, what risk came with them. All the while, by every credible account, profiting personally and clearly professionally from the suffering of millions of people. Now, thanks to Bobby Kennedy's book and a new report just released by Senator Ron Johnson, who's going to talk soon, the picture is even clearer. We are getting a fuller, more comprehensive view of what appears to be a deliberate cover-up of the known risks and harms of the mRNA vaccines. This isn't politics. I want to say that as clearly as I can. People died who should still be alive. Husbands, wives, parents, children. They died because of bad science propped up by self-interested lies. What Anthony Fauci did, in my view, was a crime against the American people and a crime against humanity. But also a crime of this magnitude cannot be allowed to go unpunished. So let me be clear about what MAHA is doing, because no newspaper in the country is covering this, no media source. We are laser focused on accountability for what happened. And we are just as focused on helping Secretary Kennedy carry out the mandate that millions of Americans handed him. But this is an important step, and we want to see it done. Just a few days ago, Secretary Kennedy made an announcement that many of us have been waiting for our entire adult lives. For decades, public health officials either looked the other way on over-medicalization of American children, or they cashed in on it. Secretary Kennedy is taking it head on without fear and without favor. On Monday, Secretary Kennedy spoke at the MAHA Institute's Mental Health and Over-Medicalization Summit in Washington. The summit pulled the curtain back on Big Pharma's profiteering from what is essentially a discredited theory, the so-called chemical imbalance model of mental illness. On the back of that theory, drugs that chemically require or rewire children's brains, SSRIs being the most obvious drugs, showing this, have been handed out to millions of kids in this country like candy. This has to come to an end, and it is coming to an end. Secretary Kennedy has issued a multi-agency Dear Colleague letter saying and laying out in plain language what actually is wrong with these drugs and what they do. They increase depression in some patients. They lead to antisocial behavior, verbal and cognitive decline, sexual dysfunction, and in some documented cases, extreme violence. He is committed to shifting the mental health paradigm away from this drugs first model and towards things that actually help people heal. Psychotherapy, real human connection for isolated kids, behavioral help, sleep, exercise, nutrition, all the basics. And these are things that work. So here's where I stand and where MAHA stands. On Fauci and the COVID cover-up, we want justice, real justice, and I'm not letting it go, and we're not going to let this go. On the over-medicalization of children, we are fully behind Secretary Kennedy's effort to fix a system that has been broken for far too long, so our kids can grow up healthy in body and in mind without being handed cures that are often worse than what they're supposed to be treating. We have a tremendous lineup of guests today, and many of them you know well. Today we'll be hearing from U.S. Representative from Michigan's 7th District, Tony Barrett, a naturopath and former White House health policy advisor and recovering epidemiologist, Katy Talento, Principal Deputy Chief of Staff and Senior Counselor to Secretary Kennedy, Stephanie Spear, author of the novel Confessions of Anthony Fauci, Bobby Kennedy III, physician, inventor, scientist, and author, Dr. Robert Malone, President of Health Freedom Defense Fund, Leslie Manookian, founder and president of Brownstone Institute, Jeffrey Tucker, author, health coach, and advocate for natural living, Liana Werner Gray, and then, of course, the knowledge doc, Dr. Eric Berg, and then comedian, podcast host, and consciousness explorer, Russell Brand. First up, we have U.S. Senator from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson. Senator Johnson has always been a MAHA champion and advocate. He was one of the first in the federal government to question the failed COVID response and to give voice to those harmed by the COVID vaccine. He recently held hearings on the Biden administration's concealment of COVID-19 vaccine safety signals. So, Senator Johnson, thank you for your incredible work and welcome to the MAHA Media Hub.
Well, thank you, Tony. And because time is short, let me cut right to the chase. Because of Secretary Kennedy's commitment to radical transparency, even though people within his agency do not particularly want to cooperate, he forced them to turn over about 11 million pages of documents to us. And credit my staff for finding needles in the haystack. They found the email, by the way, not from HHS. This is when Biden administration weren't cooperating with us, but with one of the universities as a grantee. They found that email from Dr. David Moran's where David Moran's was bragging about the fact that he had this FOIA lady who was teaching him how to make emails disappear. And if you have something sensitive, send it to Gmail. Okay, now fast forward, now we get 11 million pages. What my staff has now uncovered, not only did they hide signals of myocarditis early on, also signals on ischemic stroke in people over 65 toward the tail of 2022. But on March 1st, 2021, less than 3 months after the start of the COVID injections, Peter Marks was briefed by their premier data mining expert who was working with the inventor of the algorithm that the FDA used to analyze VAERS, that algorithm was outdated because of the two injections that are very similar. And that algorithm was going to mask or hide safety signals. Again, this is a multi-page briefing Peter Marks received personally. 26 days later, this exact same data mining expert, Dr. Anna Sharfsman, again, working with the inventor from Oracle of the data mining algorithm, they developed a new state-of-the-art algorithm, and they briefed all kinds of top FDA officials that they had discovered 49 cases of extreme masking, 25 safety signals on very serious adverse events, including Bell's palsy and pulmonary infarction and sudden cardiac death. Month after month after month, Dr. Sharfman continued to do these data mining inquiries showing more and more serious adverse events, including sudden death. Instead of painting a medal on their chest, they shunted Dr. Sharfman off the side. She became a problem, a distraction. They told her to cease and desist. We weren't interested in your data mining. We're going to use the old algorithm that you warned us was going to hide safety signals. We're going to continue to use those. They said it was for consistency. I think we all know they clung to that algorithm so they wouldn't have to acknowledge what was sitting right in front of their face. Right? People like you and me, we didn't need a sophisticated algorithm to see what was happening in VAERS. Prior to 2021, on average, since the start of VAERS 1990, on average, there are about 280 deaths per year reported to VAERS associated with the vaccine, 280. In 2021, there are over 21,000. And when FDA CDC officials were confronted with that, they would always say, well, that's because we have billions of doses of the COVID injection. Well, my staff and I conducted a little calculation. We looked at, okay, what is the number of deaths per dose? For COVID injection, it was 25.5 deaths per million doses. For the flu, about 0.46. So COVID injections had a 55-fold increase in deaths per million doses, and still FDA officials hid behind that algorithm, and they told the people they're actually treating for what they diagnosed as injection injuries. They told them, we're not seeing safety signals. We've got a video in our hearing. Peter Marks, through the end of 2022, continued to tell that group, we're not seeing safety signals. They also told that exact same group on 23 individuals they were treating, somewhat successfully, for these COVID injection injuries, stay silent. Tell no one. We'll eventually publish a study. We'll admit these. They never publish the story. This is a major scandal. It's a bomb buster, whatever. It is a huge revelation. The problem is no corporate media is covering this. I've been doing interview after interview with alternate media. Not one major network has covered this story. And I was just invited to be on CNN yesterday. I told them what I would talk about. They canceled the interview. So again, hats off to you folks for covering this. This is big news. This is a blockbuster, is the word, blockbuster revelation.
Thank you so much. You've just done incredible work. And, they can make emails disappear, but they can't make the truth disappear. And they can't make the work that you've done disappear. And you've covered these harms, the COVID vaccine harms, better than anybody has. And just incredible work. I just want to keep on saying that. So, clearly the COVID injections cost thousands and thousands of deaths, and lies and corruption kill people. And transparency, the kind of transparency that you've really been fighting for, saves people's lives. So thank you for everything that you've done and that you continue doing. And I hope we can really find justice here, notwithstanding the fact that nobody wants to look at this and that no mainstream media will even touch it. So thanks again.
Thanks for your efforts.
Next up, we have Congressman Tom Barrett. And he is the U.S. representative for Michigan's 7th Congressional District and has been since 2025. He's a financial analyst and former U.S. Army officer. And he's a fierce fighter for veterans and for, fighting vaccine mandates and COVID-19 vaccines, in particular. Tom has made it his mission to defend the autonomy of his fellow service members and expose the damage that Dr. Fauci did to our health systems during the pandemic and for so many years beforehand. So thanks for coming on, Tom.
Tony, thank you so much for having me. And I apologize in advance. I'm crisscrossing my district in Michigan today. So I appreciate the opportunity to join you all remotely and share a little bit about the work that we're doing in Congress. And thank you for the advocacy of each of you on this call today for what you're doing. My pathway to Congress came out of my work in the United States Army. I was in the Army. I had done my whole career during this 20-year-long war on terror. And then Joe Biden, as president of the United States, dropped this aggressive vaccine mandate on the entire United States military. In fact, I had already had COVID, already recovered from it, and already donated my antibodies as part of that effort that was done to try and spur immunity among other people when this mandate came out and came across and affecting every single member of the military. I made the decision to retire. I was threatened with a dishonorable discharge after my more than 2 decades of honorable service and deployments around the world, threatened with a dishonorable discharge. And so were so many other members of the military facing the same type of difficult decision that I was. I made the decision to leave the military, launch my campaign for Congress, and stand opposed to these vaccine mandates. This work that I did went back to my time in the state legislature. Before COVID even happened, I had sponsored legislation in the Michigan legislature to reinforce that bond that parents have with their children, to not allow the government to intervene to stop parents from exempting their child for whatever reason they deem necessary, medical, philosophical, or otherwise, to exempt their child from one of the vaccines that is required to attend public schools in Michigan. My wife and I talked about this in our own lives, not specifically necessarily about the measles vaccine or any of these others, but just in general, that parental relationship with our children. And my wife reminded me, she says, nobody cares more about our kids than we do. Not the government, not, some official at their school, not a state lawmaker, not the governor, and not any member of Congress or the president of the United States. We care more about our kids than anybody else, and we are vested with the decisions to make on their behalf. And we had seen parents in Michigan get harassed because they had decided to exempt their child from one of the required vaccines to attend public schools. And we wanted to make sure that that relationship was reinforced. We've also worked hard in Congress now to make up for that lost ground with members of the military who were subject to the vaccine mandate. They may have left service so that we can either bring them back in or justly compensate them for the loss of benefits that they incurred because of that mandate. We also voted on the Farm Bill last week in the House of Representatives, and we were able to take up amendments that would really allow for more disclosure and more reinforcement of things like pesticide use and things of that sort. We also changed the SNAP benefits so that these really ultra sugary drinks are not able to be purchased using SNAP food stamp benefits, so that parents are encouraged to make healthier options and healthier choices for their kids. These are things that we're trying to move in the right direction on. I also sponsored another bill with a Democrat colleague of mine, a bipartisan bill to kind of start looking at the health effects, especially in young men, to study the effects of screen time use, especially video game types of problems and addictions that young men seem to face more commonly today than ever before. So we're doing what we can to try and reinforce healthy outcomes and healthy options for everybody across America. I was proud to sponsor another bill last week that would allow Americans to purchase healthy groceries using their HSAs in a tax-exempt fashion. So we welcome input and thoughts from people here on this call today, and certainly appreciate the partnership with all of you looking to create a healthier environment for everybody across America. And again, so much for having me on today.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for coming on, and I hope you'll just keep doing what you're doing, keep driving, keep traveling all around Michigan and telling people the truth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. So, Tom is not only a fierce defender of medical freedom, but he's also a strong backer of many of the things that matter most to MAHA and to the MAHA movement. And he's most recently held the line for MAHA in the U.S. House, when he stood up with 72 other members of the GOP and voted in favor of the Luna Amendment. He's also cast his vote in favor of getting rid of sugary drinks from SNAP. And so, because Congressman Barrett is defining what it looks like to stay true to MAHA and truly put American health first, we're absolutely thrilled to endorse him for the U.S. Congress. And we're looking forward to a victory, to his victory. And, because that would be a victory for the MAHA movement. So thank you to Tom for what he's doing, and we're proud to endorse him. Next up, we have Dr. Robert Malone, and he's one of the most important voices for medical freedom and informed consent. And he's been just fundamental to the process of exposing corruption in our medical system. And, he's been a very strong advocate for bringing justice to this country in the form of in indicting or in some other way making Dr. Fauci pay for the crimes that he committed. So he's a doctor, he's an inventor, he's a scientist, he's a he's a journalist, he's done so many things. He's a terrific author, and he's written several books for us, including Psy Wars, and he's got more books coming, and we're thrilled to have him on again.
Thanks a lot, Tony. Tony asked me to talk about the other Tony today, Dr. Fauci. So we have Dr. Lyons suggesting I talk about Dr. Fauci. So I wrote a Substack about this a couple days ago that was an analysis from the framework of Murray Rothbard's theories having to do with the court intellectuals. So thanks for having me. I want to tell you something that took me 30 years inside the system to figure out, and that the rest of the country is finally starting to figure out too. The chronic disease epidemic in American children is not an accident. It is not a mystery. And it is not a research gap waiting on more science. It's a policy outcome. For 4 decades, the National Institutes of Health, and especially the agency Anthony Fauci ran for 38 years, decided what got studied in this country and what did not. They had the money, they had the journals, they had the credentialing, they had the press, and the questions they did not want asked did not get asked. Why are American kids today 3 times more allergic, 4 times more autoimmune, and dramatically more autistic than the generation born before 1986? You'll not find a serious federally funded answer to that question for some reason. You will find research on the next generation of patentable vaccines. You will find research on the next gain-of-function pathogen. You will find $100 million for a bat virus survey in Wuhan. But what you will not find is the chronic disease research that should have been the central project of American biomedicine for the last 40 years, and particularly the central project of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. That's not because the scientists are stupid. The scientists are very smart. The scientists are responding to the incentives the system gives them. And the system rewards the patentable. The system rewards the emergency authorized. The system rewards the thing that pharmaceutical industry wanted built next. The chronic disease question has no patentable answer, so the system does not ask about it. This is what I mean when I say American biomedical science has been captured. Not captured in the sense that bad people took it over necessarily, although maybe there's a few exceptions. Captured in the sense that an agency, an industry, a foundation network, a press apparatus, and a credentialing class slowly grew into one organism with one appetite, and that organism's appetite is not your children's health. You already knew this in your bones. That's why you're here. That's why you read the labels. That's why you got off the seed oils. That's why you ask the pediatrician questions she does not want to answer. You figured it out. Individually, what the institutions were never going to tell you. Now, I want to tell you the harder part. The man retired in 2022. The system did not. It is still funded. It's still credentialed. It is still in the chairs at every university medical center in this country. Replacing one man at the top does not replace the apparatus underneath him. Pardons do not replace it. Cabinet appointments do not replace it. Even good legislation does not replace it on its own. What replaces it is what you were already doing. Independent journalism, independent clinicians, independent farmers, independent moms with spreadsheets who know more about their kids' medical histories than the system ever bothered to learn. We rebuild the truth-telling institutions outside the captured ones. We fund the research the system refused to fund. We train the next generation of doctors to ask the questions their professors were trained to never ask. That is the work. That is the only work here. The damage took 40 years to build. The repair will take a generation. So let's get started. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. And, it's a great point that, what's happened to all of us and to this country, it's not an accident. It's a policy outcome. So that's just such a great statement. And the press has attacked you and gone after Bobby, and they've given Dr. Fauci a pass for years, for half a century, as he failed his way to the top and failed us all of those years. And the press knows that he lied. Everybody knows that he lied. And they're just letting him get away with it. And we can't do that. And we won't do that. And you've been telling the truth. You've been speaking out, even when it was really, really difficult. So, if it's up to me, I say you should just keep on talking, keep on fighting, keep on giving us your perspective. We need you. And I know you're not going to stop. I don't want you to stop. And thank you. Love you for all that you've done.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Next up, we have Robert F. Kennedy III. He's a writer, an actor, a comedian, a director, and he's the author of the incredibly funny book, The Confessions of Anthony Fauci. And it's not just funny, it's an important book, and it's really, really well written. And it's written in the first person from Dr. Fauci's perspective, confessing his sins, which he should be doing right now. And we should be forcing him to confess those sins, from ferret labs of 2010 through the COVID pandemic. So welcome, Bobby. And I think you need to ask him a question right here, right now. Hey, we can't hear you. And we need to hear you.
Hey, does that work? Sorry, I think I was muted.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Geez, if I could ask him one question, I guess I would ask him, who's paying for your bodyguards, Tony? Because I kind of ended up living in the same neighborhood as him, and I see him walking around every now and then, and he's got basically 4 NFL linebackers kind of on each of his points that, walk everywhere around with him. They're obviously, he's not a big guy, and they're all like over 6'8". So you kind of just see this big jellyfish looking thing moving its way around Georgetown, DC. And, I know that he was the highest paid member of the federal government for a long time, but I can tell you that those guys don't come cheap. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else is footing the bill there. Anecdotally, I see him around. Obviously, last couple of weeks with, Morenz getting arrested have been a big kind of inflection point for like, will they or won't they prosecute Fauci? Will that pardon hold up? I think, now the Department of Justice seems to be under a better direction than it was. And I think the Robert F. Kennedy Department of Justice at that. So I think I think by squeezing Morenz, I think we might finally get Fauci on the stand. And obviously, if he were to perjure himself in front of Congress, his pardon would not apply, even if you throw out the whole, it was an auto pen, so it doesn't apply anyway argument. One of my favorite stories about it is right after my dad took over HHS, the FBI came in, weirdly in an odd little bit of anecdotal wisdom. They were wearing Hawaiian t-shirts, and they seized Fauci's laptop, which was in his office, locked up behind a bookshelf. So they knew it was there. Luckily, one of the Doge kids managed to make a copy of it, so it's still out there. But right now, the FBI is claiming providence over it. I don't think that's true, but we do have, his emails, which obviously we don't have access to at the moment. But all the stuff that Morenz was talking about in terms of, you got to contact Tony on his private email, yada yada yada, the FOIA stuff that we've heard a bunch. Apparently it's on there. So I do think that we've got, a potential piece of hard evidence. And now we have Morenz is obviously an old guy. I don't think he wants to die in prison. So I do believe that he'll roll over. And then I think the next interesting thing after that will be, is Tony Fauci actually the mastermind of this whole situation, or is he kind of the fall guy? Will he roll over on whoever's controlling him? Because the entire global gain of function system, it doesn't make any sense when you look at it. It's never saved a single life. It hasn't led to the development of a miracle vaccine, and all it seems to have done is created a bunch of bioweapons. I mean, I think most people would tell you that's what they were doing the whole time, and the "we're saving people" was just simply cover for that. But if you look at all these tick videos that are going viral, I had one of the worst cases of Lyme disease in New York State history, and now you look at the hantavirus on the cruise ship, and you see that, does Argentina have any BSL-4 labs? Oh yeah, they have one. It's a hantavirus lab. So I mean, I think you just it's this massive history of viruses appearing only after they've been researched in these sort of labs. And I think we got to ask ourselves, why does this system exist? It doesn't exist to protect people. So then what is the real motivation? And I think once you look into that, you get the answers, but I would love to hear it come from Fauci's mouth.
Yeah, thanks. And it's so clear that the system is set up to create control and to make a lot of money for a very small group of companies, and not to protect any of us. And I just want to say that that's a great question. Is he a mastermind? Is he a fall guy? What is his role? And until you prosecute him, you don't have any chance of sort of working that out. So, that's such an important part of it all. And it's clear that medical control, federal medical control kills people, and medical freedom saves lives. So let me just say one last thing to you, and that is that I think that you wrote an incredible book. It's just a great book, and I want everyone to hear that. It's just really funny, it's poignant, but it's also serious. It's really well done, and it chronicles this whole story in just a really unique way. So, you just did a great job. Thanks for writing it. And I hope everybody watching this reads it. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Yeah. And also listen to it because I did his voice. Pretty fun.
Definitely. Next up, we have Katy Talento. She is a Harvard-trained doctor, a naturopathic doctor, a former health policy advisor, and special assistant to President Trump during his first term. She spent 2 decades inside the DC healthcare cabal, and then left to help people all around the country and employers learn how to outsmart it. She's recently published just an incredible story called Confessions of a White House Public Health Priestess, exposing how COVID-era policies were unscientific and manipulated. And I was so just proud of you, Katy, for doing that, and so glad to see it. And it's just a breakthrough, and I'm thrilled to have you on.
Thank you so much, Tony. It's such an honor to be here with all of these warriors, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be part of the crowd now, part of the cool kids. But I guess I just wanted to talk a little bit about why I wrote the piece, and what the piece was and what it said. But essentially, the short story is that, I was an infectious disease epidemiologist. That's my training, and I grew up in that world. And, we never were really taught anything but the orthodoxy. And, that's not just at Harvard, that's at every public health school and every medical school, I'm sure. And so I believed in, that we were saving kids, that vaccines were saving kids, and that it was the only real way to do that and to do it effectively. And so I believed in that. And throughout my time working in the Senate, I worked for a bunch of different senators, but especially when I got to the White House, I was asked to address the fact that Mr. Kennedy, not quite Secretary Kennedy yet, but Mr. Kennedy had gotten the president before he was elected in 2016 to agree to a vaccine safety commission. And it was my job to make that problem go away. And I believed in making that problem go away because I thought that if we had vaccine skeptical messaging coming out of the White House, that kids would die. This was everything we do, everything I did anyway, was out of trying to save the country and trying to do the right thing for the country. And I really thought that we needed herd immunity and we needed maximum uptake of all these products. And so I asked Dr. Fauci and Dr. Collins at the NIH to take the meeting away from the White House, away from public view. And that meeting did kind of become a little bit famous as it was the meeting that Mr. Kennedy and Del Bigtree and Aaron Siri and I think a few others met with the HHS folks and eventually sued them to get what was promised to them, the mountains and mountains of evidence on the safety of vaccines. They eventually got HHS to settle that lawsuit by admitting there was no such mountain of evidence. But anyway, the point is that I eventually left the White House right before COVID, actually. So I wasn't part of the COVID response, thankfully. I had enough on my conscience, but I left right before COVID. And during the COVID epidemic, I was, trying to defend the president. I was helping him with this reelect, and I was trying to defend what the government was up to. But slowly over that first year of 2020, and especially into 2021 with the new administration, the cognitive dissonance was too much. And I eventually woke up, and there was my story is really a series of, the article I wrote is a series of events and episodes that led to that awakening. And I wrote it because, and it's sort of an apology to now Secretary Kennedy, and all the people who've been in this movement for so many decades and are mad at people like me who didn't wake up and who didn't know better. And I wrote the article publicly because I had actually apologized to Mr. Kennedy years ago when I first woke up. But I did it publicly now recently because I want to help mainstream the awakening. I want to help mainstream that, like, hey, you can be a doctor, you can be an epidemiologist, you can be a politician, you can be working in government, and you can have taken the status quo orthodoxy line in public health for your entire career, but you know what's going on. And many, many of us do. Many people that I talk to, in the system, still in the system, who kind of roll their eyes when they talk about vaccines. And I wanted to create a permission field, if you will, or expand that permission field to come forward and to tell the truth as, whatever kind of expertise you have. And so I hope I've done that. I know a lot of people are mad at me that I didn't wake up earlier, and I'm sorry. I wish I had. But, we really do drink a lot of Kool-Aid, and I really thought I was helping people. But anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah, thanks so much, Katy. And I am not mad at you. I don't think anybody should be mad at you. What matters is what you do now. And, telling the truth in the end saves kids' lives. And lying to the public harms people, kills people. And so, you've come clean. That's a great thing. That's incredibly rare. Almost nobody ever does that. And it's so critical. So once again, I don't care about the past. I care about what you've done right now. And I'm grateful, and I'm sure that so many other people are. So, questioning what authorities say, that's so critical always in any time. And that also leads to much better outcomes. So thank you for what you've done, because it's a real blow to a kind of a system that has harmed people.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Tony.
Thanks. Next up, we have Russell Brand, who I guess one thing we can say about Russell Brand is that he never drank the Kool-Aid about anything. And, he questions everything. And, I think that's a big part of the reason, maybe the entire reason, that he's been persecuted, vilified, attacked, sued, and prosecuted. And I believe in you, Russell, and I'm grateful for everything you're doing. And it's just so great to have you on once again, and as many times as you'll come on.
Oh, Tony, thanks, man. I was just doing my own show. Hey, guess what? I've just been talking to Ron Paul. Oh, it's encouraging to talk to Ron Paul because why? Because he's got actual integrity and sort of simple kind of elderhood. I don't know about all of you lot, and I understand that one of the things we're talking about is Fauci, and I'm assuming like the kind of the criminality of Fauci. Who was it that published that book, The Real Anthony Fauci? That guy must be loaded. Like, don't you remember at the time how Fauci was sort of trotted out like a kind of priest, how we were sort of invited to really revere him? And I actually do recall at certain points, like I saw this, like sometimes life gets so insane. Here, there it is. There's the book. That gets me in all sorts of trouble, that thing. Like I remember at the time, and I think this is a memory, not a dream, that I saw some TV show say, Anthony Fauci, is it okay that we fancy him, that we find him sexually attractive? I thought, what is that what we're talking about now? People have got to wear 2 masks, 3 masks to leave the bloody house. And we're thinking about whether or not we should be, I don't know, filleting or otherwise engaging with Anthony Fauci. Is that where we are? I feel like what I'm witnessing just now is like looking at some like footage from the Met Ball, that Met Ball. And I feel like this can't be sustained, this level of idiotic decadence. It's too hysterical. It's too ridiculous. It's beyond Babylon. I don't know what was going on in I don't know, Caligula's palace, but we sort of know it was hedonic orgies. And I don't know what was going on in sort of Nero's time. I mean, I know it was like sort of the execution of Christian martyrs, etc. One story I heard is that it was Nero, I think, had some sort of classic world version of aircon installed. I don't know how that would have worked in the sort of classical world, and that it blew gold leaf through it. So like that Nero could be cooled and have sort of gold leaf blowing through the air while he was cooled. And when that system was finally active and instituted, Nero famously said, "Finally, I can start living like a human being." There is a level of, sybaritic is the word, a kind of a fondness of luxury, a level of decadence that is so sort of gallingly extreme that the fact that it can live alongside of kind of crippling poverty, genocide, and deception. It's very, very confusing to be alive now, is what I would say. It's very, very confusing. And I'm really trying to think, because one of my friends who I've had for a long time goes, "Why are you even participating in the culture anymore? You obviously don't like it." And that is true. I don't like it. I don't know what the redeemed version of this is. I don't know if I need some time to reflect. And if certain people get their way, I'll be getting that time to reflect. I don't know if there's... I'm at the point, Tony Lyons, and this must be hard for you to hear while we're embarking on the promo of the book that I can see is on screen now. Like, I'm sort of losing faith very quickly in any of the instruments of the culture. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, I'm sort of... 1 minute remaining. I'm sort of attracted by the idea of extreme monasticism, but some of my mentors tell me, "No, Russell, you do have a gift for public communication and participation in debate. But if you can create a commodity because all things are commodity, like Fauci, reify him, elevate him. He can get through the HIV crisis and not be held to account, get through the pandemic and not be held to account, have that sort of excellent book, The Real Anthony Fauci, published with QR codes to back up every claim. And still now, he's sort of able to quietly, meekly just back off the stage. I don't see no sort of sense of impending justice. It makes me feel like this is the time for adjacent systems. This is not the time for change within the system. The system is, it's dead. It's a dead system. And, I'm a man that believes in resurrection, but I also am a pragmatic man. And I'm wondering if what we should be doing now is using the available technology to set up adjacent systems that are truly representative and democratic, accepting that these institutions are captured, co-opted, and totally controlled by the worst imaginable corruption, and spending our shared resources, and by which I mean our time and our spirit, creating true independence. I pray, Tony, that the good faith and goodwill of you and many of the beautiful people on the call, like I know that we've got Dr. Eric Berg coming up, and who's that next? Oh gosh, I shouldn't have touched that. It's not my phone. That was terrifying. The results of that. I know there are such brilliant people, and there is good cause for optimism. But I'm starting to wonder what the exchange is, what the market is, what the milieu and medium is for that exchange. Because man, the culture is exhausting me. Tony, I love you. Thanks for always having me on here. Thanks all of you for your ongoing dedication and devotion. And I pray that from these small groups brought together around, proper idealism and proper righteousness, something beautiful can be nurtured. And I believe in you, Tony, for sure.
I think it definitely can. Something beautiful can. And I think I just want to say that you definitely do have a gift. You have an incredible gift of connecting with people, with millions and millions of people. But, it is true. You're up against people like Dr. Fauci. You're up against some of the most, powerful villains in history. And this decadence, these lies, propaganda, corruption, it all has to end. And people need to question everything. And you're helping them do that. And people have to live like human beings, like you said. And they have to find truth, and they have to find God. And, if they want to find God, one way they can do it is they can read your book. That you give them a pathway and a blueprint and a roadmap to actually do that. And it's an incredible book, and you're an incredible person, and I'm grateful. Next up, we have Leslie Mnookin and also, I believe, Jeffrey Tucker. It's going to be sort of a simultaneous thing. Leslie is the president and founder of the Health Freedom Defense Fund, the organization which stopped the federal mask mandate. She succeeded in passing the Idaho Medical Freedom Act that prohibits medical mandates for almost all the people in that state. And then Jeffrey Tucker will be joining her to discuss the true popularity of medical freedom, just overwhelming numbers. And the media lies about it. The pollsters lie about it, but it's there. And Jeffrey is the founder and president of the Brownstone Institute, which emerged during the whole COVID era. And, he's just created this great platform that's been critical of the lockdowns and of all the government corruption. And, he's done great work. He's written 17 books in 5 languages. So welcome, Leslie and Jeffrey, and thank you for all the incredible work you've done. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thanks so much for having us, Tony. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
So I think the last 2 speakers actually provide a perfect segue for us into this topic, because Katy was talking about the masses of people and where they are, and then maybe how that's different in the medical establishment. And then Russell was talking a little bit about just, how fractured and decaying our society is in so many ways. But we have good news for you, friends. Most people actually believe in health freedom. And we know this because Jeffrey and I commissioned a poll in late February. We worked on it for about a week to devise the perfect questions that did not lead or, elicit a desired response, but really just took the pulse of Americans. And we found that 91% of Americans actually believe in informed consent for all medical interventions, including vaccinations, which is a staggering number. It crossed party lines. It was amongst Republicans, Democrats, and independents alike. And so what I really want to say here is that I think it's so important that we understand that, yes, things are very broken in our system. However, more people think like us than we realize. Our same poll found that 88% of the public believe in the right to refuse unwanted medical interventions, and 87% said that that should be codified in law. So this is just a huge number. And I think that the really kind of pernicious aspect of what we're dealing with here is that people have been indoctrinated to trust authority and to trust the medical profession for many decades. And part of the way that that happens is through the use of polls. And Jeffrey and I, when we basically dug into this, we were astounded to see what the actual questions are that are posed in some of these polls, which then lead to results like, questions such as should vaccines be required for, proven necessary vaccinations be required to keep people healthy and well, something like that. So of course it's going to lead to a predetermined response. And our polls show that that's not actually where people really are. And then Politico did a poll, which is really interesting. So wait, let me go back to this. That what we really found was that these polls are being used for many, many different reasons. One of them is to manipulate public opinion. So they sort of make the individual believe that the individual is alone in that opinion, that it's somehow fringe to think that you are entitled to medical freedom and bodily autonomy. And then they also do something else, which is to give cover to the policymakers who are actually looking for cover for a certain agenda that they may be pushing, or that maybe the pharmaceutical industry or a vested interest is pushing. And so these are super interesting and not very, I think, very much obscured ways that these polls are used they're basically used to manipulate the public, not to just tell us where public opinion is. And I think it's so important that we all understand this. But to me, the biggest takeaway, and what's so exciting, is that actually people believe what we believe, which is that we should have medical freedom. And Jeffrey can talk about, there was just a recent Politico poll that was so interesting that just completely reinforced our findings. So I think I'll leave it there. I can chime in on more of what Jeffrey might say.
Let me just add here. So when Leslie and I put this poll together, what we wanted to avoid was giving the polled the proper answer. For example, we saw a lot of polls that were asking things like, do you favor established medical protocols for dealing with deadly diseases, right? This kind of question, like who wouldn't say, yes, I do. Our poll was asking, do you want to force people to get medical interventions that they otherwise would not accept? So we asked very plain questions. We constructed 30 of them over several days, and we examined each question. And we found out things that shocked me. First of all, this is not a partisan issue. This is very broad, actually. And things like 2/3 of the public thinks that the COVID policy responses were too extreme and that they did enormous damage to society. That kind of result. We asked a question about should Fauci be held accountable for his damaging policies during COVID. 76% of Republicans and even 54% of Democrats said absolutely he should. You know, just overwhelming numbers in every area. And we were shocked by this, and we actually worried that people wouldn't believe the poll. So I insisted that when we published this, we published the complete results with all the questions we asked, and you can judge the questions for yourself, and all of the answers complete with vast numbers of pages of in PDF and with all the crosstabs, so you can examine it for yourself. And we posted it all at brownstone.org/poll. So you can look it up and examine it for yourself. Now, when Leslie and I were so excited to release this thing, and we worked on a release charts and data and an article over the weekend and revealed it on Monday. And so it was really instructive for me personally, and I'm sure Leslie feels the same way. I was very excited to send it out to all of my contacts in the media who have been after me for the previous, 2, 3, and 4 years, to give them statements about this and this and this, and I've been generally aloof. Well, now I had a scoop for them. So I wrote all these reporters at all the top places and said, guess what? We've got a great scoop for you. You're going to love this poll. Please report it. Well, 24 hours went by, nothing. 48 hours went by, nothing. After about a week, I realized, whoops, we're not going to get any media attention on this whatsoever. But they kept reporting all the other deeply flawed polls, and ours still has not been reported in any major venue. It's very similar to what Senator Johnson says. So, that reveals something about national media, but still, the information has gotten out. MAHA Action has done some great work in getting the results out there. The results are exactly what Leslie said. You're not a crazy person. Your intuition is shared by the vast numbers of super majorities of the American public. But you're not a crazy person, despite how the major media makes you feel. Your desire for medical freedom and for health freedom and for choice and the kind of medical services you consume, it's completely a mainstream opinion. That's what our poll has revealed, and I feel very excited about it.
Yeah, it's also reinforced just the extent to which the legacy media is actually propagandizing Americans, right? They are propping up these polls that they know do not reflect the sentiment of the American people, while they are completely obscuring our poll and other polls that show something similar. So it's very clear to me, but I find it extremely encouraging. When we got these results, we were just like gobsmacked, right? And the pollster Zogby, he was saying, he was like, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
Jeremy Zogby said he had never seen, we had a conference call with him. I've never seen anything like this. We never get super majorities, which is usually 65, 70% in any issue, let alone in something that's so, quote, controversial, right? And so to me, what this is what's really exciting about this, especially when you connect the dots with what Senator Johnson said and others, is that this is an opportunity for us to actually make our voices heard. And one of the ways that MAHA Action and other groups of us, Brownstone, HFDF, CHD, have tried to make our voices heard is through covidjustice.org. And this is a resolution that we want the U.S. Senate to adopt. And we are asking every single person watching here to go to covidjustice.org and sign the resolution that recognizes and acknowledges all of the heinous crimes, the overreach under COVID, and demands that the Senate actually issue a resolution in order to ensure that this does not happen again.
Or any other legislative body, by the way. It could be passed in any state house or any city council. But we need some kind of culture-wide statement that what happened to us was wrong and should never be repeated again. We need this desperately for the healing to begin.
Yeah.
Thanks, both of you.
covidjustice.org.
Yeah, covidjustice.org. Go to covidjustice.org, sign up, sign it, think about it, pass it on to your friends. And, clearly what both of you say and what is so obviously true is that people want health freedom because they don't trust the captured government. I mean, they have a right to it anyway, but they don't trust the captured government agencies. And, we have great people now in power. We have Bobby Kennedy, we have Dr. Oz, we have Stephanie Spear, we have all these terrific people, but they're fighting the same battles we are. There's this incredible deep state. They're trying to wait it out, trying to stall, and they don't work for us. Those people, they work for this small number of corporations. They're not our friends. This is a war, and you, Leslie, and you, Jeffrey, you are warriors battling this behemoth, this incredible beast that has been lying to us with statistics and, giving us fake science for all of this time, giving us fake polling. But we should all believe your polls. And, we should believe your polls because you have no agenda. You're not trying to make money on it. You're not trying to become more famous. You're trying to tell the truth. And I know that with both of you. And so I believe your polls, and the media doesn't cover it because they don't work for us. They work for those people. And they're propping that up. And they're part of the lies and the propaganda. And they're not our friends. They're not your friends. They're not anybody's friends. So, people should just stop reading any of those venues. They should stop going to those TV shows. And they should start listening to people like the two of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
covidjustice.org. Go to it.
Thanks so much, Tony.
Next up, we have Liana Werner-Gray, and she's a certified nutritionist, a 3-time best-selling author, and she had her own, battle with health problems, with cancer, with chronic fatigue, with all kinds of problems. And she's just become a fighter and a warrior, and she's been on the front lines of the MAHA movement and of all the battles that are connected to the MAHA movement. And, I'm just so grateful for the work that you've done. And, I follow you and I see that you're just showing up around the country. You're talking at big events. You're on TV. You're in all forms of media. You're doing exactly what we want everybody watching this show to do. And it's so important. And you're joining us here, and we're thrilled to have you here to talk about your new book, which is called The Truth About Seed Oils. And, it's just such an important piece of this whole puzzle. And you're on all sides of it. And thank you for everything that you're doing. Welcome. Hey, we can't hear you yet, but we want to.
Wait, here we go. Hi, thank you so much, Tony. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for hosting this every single week. I mean, your dedication and consistency is unmatched. And thank you to the MAHA team. Thank you to Katya and Kyle and everyone at MAHA Action for putting this on. And also thank you to everyone for being here, for everyone who's so passionate about making America healthy again. I know that everyone here is very passionate and dedicated to protecting people's health. And that's why we're here. And I'm 17 years cancer-free. Thank God, praise God. And, may God release from the heavens strength for us and joy and peace and love and just strength for us for this mission that we have ahead, for this army, this battle that we have ahead, this mission. So today I'm going to be sharing from my new book, The Truth About Seed Oils. Thank you to Skyhorse Publishing and Tony. I was so excited about this book. It's a very short, quick read, which is awesome. Just very easy, quick to read. But first, I just want to share quickly a little update on the Monsanto journal case that we just had in DC last week. So there was 35 of us speaking at the Supreme Court. And many of you probably have heard that they removed the pesticide liability shield from the Farm Bill. We are just so stoked. What a MAHA win. That's just so exciting. So now we're working on other pesticide provisions in the bill to have them remove that. We probably won't know about the Monsanto journal case until June. So stay tuned on that. But keep the word out there about pesticides. Keep educating everyone that you know about glyphosate and pesticides and the dangers of that. And so, okay, I'm going to leave you guys with 4 things that every single person needs to know about seed oils. So first of all, there are healthy seed oils and then there are toxic seed oils. And that's probably very confusing for people. But the seed oils that are created in nature, created from God, that are cold pressed are really healthy and wholesome for us. So things, I have a list in here. We have a list. This is also co-authored by Sherry Kalbaum. And so the list, the healthy seed oils are flaxseed oil, hemp seed oil, pumpkin seed oil, tiger nut oil. So those are healthy seed oils. But the toxic seed oils are things like canola oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, grapeseed oil, rapeseed oil, soybean oil, safflower oil. Those are the toxic oils. And also, there's a list in here, cleverly disguised seed oils. So you'll see now things, if they say soy lecithin or lecithin or even plant oil, those are disguised for seed oil. So you want to stay away from that. Obviously, if we eat whole foods from nature, we're going to stay away from these toxic oils. The second thing to know is the history of seed oils. So we have been told lies about the history. And so seed oils were never created originally for human consumption. Safflower seed oil and cottonseed oil were created for World War I and World War II to be lubricant for machinery. Then once the war finished, they said, how can we get this into food? And so that's how we have it in our food industry today. The third thing is that everyone needs to know is how they are linked to everything from Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer, infertility, and even homicide. Yes, there are some amazing studies in this book. So seed oils are worse than people think. We need to spread the word. It is a $500 billion industry, so that industry is trying to protect them at all costs. And then the fourth thing to know is that we need healthy fats, and a massive driver for anxiety, depression in this country is omega-3 deficiency. So we need healthy omega-3 fats like olive oil, coconut oil, and avocado oil. And so I had anxiety, and after 3 days of consuming a lot of omega-3 fatty acids through wild fish, my anxiety was gone. And so I talk about this and more in the book. I hope you guys enjoy this and keep going, keep fighting the good fight with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. And it was a great point to mention Katya, Kyle, and Cooper, who are, at the heart of MAHA Action. They work day and night, 7 days a week, always 7 days a week. So, they're just great people. Thanks for calling them out.
Shout out to Cooper.
you definitely. And then you, Vani, Kelly Ryerson, Alexandra Munoz, Zen Honeycutt, all of you really fought the Farm Bill hard and fought to get that change made. And it was just great work and a big triumph for the whole MAHA movement. But you were on the front lines, and I'm just so grateful, for all the work that you did there. And then, this book, this is just a great book, an important book. People have to know all about toxic seed oils, and that will help people. It will help readers make better choices for themselves and for their families. And, it is scary to think about what we're up against. It's a $500 billion business and so many people making so much money at the expense of all of us. And that's just crazy. And then people like you, think about that. People like Bobby, standing up against $500 billion businesses, that's going to be hard. And we all have to stick together because that's the only way we can beat that kind of Goliath. I mean, there's just no other way. So thank you so
everyone
much
needs to read this book. Yeah, thank you, Tony. I love that this book is next to Russell's book. They look great together. Amazing.
Definitely. Thanks again, Leon. Next up, we have Dr. Eric Berg, and he's known as the Knowledge Doc. He's got 45 million followers. He's been, fighting all these battles for, more than 3 decades. He's written a ton of books. He's going to write more books. And his incredible videos are just really helpful to millions and millions of people all around the country. And I'm one of those people. And I've listened to dozens and dozens and actually made changes based on what he's told us. So, Eric, thank you for just the incredible work you're doing. Thank you for all the help, just the, round the clock help that you've been to the MAHA movement, and for just being just such an incredible warrior for public health in this country.
Thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate it. And I thank you for also leading this important movement. So I appreciate that. I want to touch on the millions of kids now that are on SSRIs, antidepressant medication, because people don't realize, we have millions of kids starting these drugs at the age of 8, 9, or even 10 years old. It's even hard to believe. So, and here's what most parents aren't told. A child's brain is not a small adult's brain. Between the ages of 8 and 25, that brain is actively under construction, pruning connections, building insulation around the nerve pathways, wiring circuits for emotions. So when you introduce an SSRI during that time frame, the drug didn't just treat the depression, it alters the construction of the foundation of the brain itself. So, that means when a child grows up, when they eventually want to come off this medication, there's nothing normal to go back to because they never built that foundation. And this has massive consequences that the parents are never warned about. Emotional blunting. This is a child who starts these drugs at 10 years old may never develop the full emotional range. And they don't even know they're missing it because they never had it. You have sexual development problems. SSRIs suppress the brain's sex sensation pathways during puberty, the exact window when these circuitries are supposed to be built. And then suicide risk. And this is the most critical because when you flatten a child's emotion, you don't just reduce their suffering, you also remove the protective feelings like fear and hope and the connection for others. So what would normally prevent a child from acting on these dark thoughts, it's not there. So those guardrails are gone. And even the FDA's own black box warning acknowledges that it increases suicide behavior in children and young adults. But how many patients actually really know this warning before they're consenting? So it's really, really bad. So there's 3 things that I think we should focus on. Enforcing the existing medication guides. This is different than informed consent. There's medication guides that are not in the tiny small font that the informed consent are. And this is like a federal law that's already enacted. It requires patients to receive these detailed written warnings about the serious side effects before starting the drug. And so they're called medication guides. They're a list of suicide risk, withdrawal symptoms, sexual dysfunction, but they're not routinely provided. I think even the website that you can download them on is broken. So now the FDA is proposing to replace these comprehensive guides with a 1-page summary that waters them down, which is it'd be very, very terrible. So what we should do is enforce the existing law, not weaken it. Second, we should require the true data on the informed consent. So before any child is prescribed a psychiatric medication, the parents must fully understand what that child is taking, because as soon as they take it, you just can't get off of it very easily. It's like it potentially could permanently alter the brain's development. And they kind of position it as, well, it might cause some minor side effects. Actually not for kids. I mean, it's worse for kids. So, and the third is they should try alternatives before putting any child on these dangerous drugs, like a simple DNA test that can reveal if there's vulnerabilities towards depression, things like that. So that child can start taking more B vitamins, the right ones, or magnesium or vitamin D, because it's totally correctable. And I used to work with kids all the time, and you can create some massive change by looking at these lifestyle simple things that can that have a huge lever. So basically, we're running this huge generation-wide experiment on developing brains without informing people of the real damaging things. So patients and children deserve to know options, and the law already exists. We just need to enforce it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric. And, your practical common sense thinking has become, one of the main shields to, sort of battle the lies and the propaganda that have led us to be the sickest generation maybe in the history of mankind, and to have the sickest kids on earth. And, you're the antidote. You're one of the important sort of fixtures that are fighting people like Dr. Fauci and the legacy that he leads of all of the terrible corruption. And you're doing that by telling the truth, by giving people the tools that they need to make better decisions, better choices for their kids, and not fall prey to a fake lying media and to a corrupt, captured government that for a generation has been promoting and selling dangerous drugs to children. So thank you for the incredible work you've done and continue to do.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So thank you all for joining us for yet another great show of the MAHA Media Hub, and for tuning in week after week. And as always, thanks to all the speakers who came on. It was just a great lineup. I just love hearing all the people who are on today and the people who come on week in and week out. And for their insights and their dedication and their contributions to the MAHA movement. And so I'm going to say again, we at MAHA have incredibly powerful tools at our fingertips. And all the people watching this and all the people who've been on this show, we are powerful people, and we can stand up to these incredibly powerful forces that have failed the American public, that have destroyed public health in this country. We can win this battle, and we're going to win it by working together. And, we have all these tools, but we need to make them stronger, more cohesive. So some of the things we have, and I'm going to say it every week, is, we have 200,000 people who read the MAHA report on Substack each week. We've got the MAHA Institute roundtables. They're just fantastic. There was a great one yesterday. Big success. Bobby Kennedy spoke at it. Then each year we have the MAHA Summit. We've got an incredible website, MAHAaction.org. We've got MAHA films, MAHA books, MAHA parties, big events all around the country. We've got a mailing list of 2 million MAHA warriors that we think gets to about 50 million people throughout the country. And we're going to build that and grow that so that it's just an incredible fighting force, because these things that have happened to us and to our families cannot stand. The fake polling, the fake media, all the lies, all the propaganda, it has to end. And, this is a day where we sort of didn't celebrate, but we mourned this period where Dr. Fauci was able to lie his way to the top, fail his way to the top, and harm so many people. So, we're going to harness every bit of power we have and build a MAHA movement that can change all of this. That's the goal. That's what I want to do. And as we heard from the polling from Jeffrey and Leslie, Americans overwhelmingly want that. And they want the government to do that, to fight to make us healthy, to fight to protect us from these predatory policies and these, predatory companies. So, following this call, you're going to get an email that has clips from this show, and we hope that you will repost them. We'll have calls to action. So share the content, follow all of the instructions. You're all fighters. You're all freedom lovers. So take what you want. Use it as much as you can, as much as you're comfortable with. Try to help us get it out there. And please sign the COVID Justice Resolution. Go to covidjustice.org, covidjustice.org. Please do that. And thank you once again for joining us. Thanks for joining us each week. And one thing that I really want to celebrate right now is that, we have Mother's Day coming up. And thank you so much. And let's all celebrate the MAHA moms and the incredible work they've done in building this movement and in helping their kids, in many cases, just tirelessly around the clock, helping their own kids through chronic disease. And we hope that the next generation doesn't have to do everything that you've had to do, because we have healthier kids because of the work you're all doing today. Thank you so much for joining us, and hope to see you next Wednesday at 4 p.m.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
There's a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.